Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We've just hit live, so we'll wait a couple more minutes while we have our participants and audience log in today. But we're so excited to welcome you to our Hire Like a Hero session today. We're going to be focusing on how to source and engage top talent. So while we've still got our audience logging in, I'll introduce myself. So I'm Jenny. I'm the Talent Acquisition Manager here at Employment Hero. I'm joined today by our three guest panelists. Not to confuse everyone, but we've got a few Gemmas and Jay names, so bear with us. But we have Gemma Sloan. She is a HR consultant and founder from Proactive HR. We've got James Stone. He's the general manager of Kaiser Community. And we've got Gemma Eaton. She is the co-owner and director of 𝗿𝗶𝗴𝗵𝘁. So welcome to Gemma, James, and Gemma. And I think it would be wonderful if you could briefly introduce yourselves to our audience today. So we'll start with Gemma with a G. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about your expertise in the talent space?
Thanks, Jenny. Hi, everyone. I am Gemma with a G. So I have been working in in-house kind of HR for the last 20 odd years. Various roles, various industries, and in a number of those roles, I guess in-house kind of recruitment was a core part of it. And just recently, at the start of this year, I took the leap, went out on my own to start Proactive HR. And that's me.
Wow, congrats. Okay, James, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody. James Stone. Excited to be here today and to be chatting about a topic that's really important to everybody, and including me. And my background, I've, like Gemma, spent the last 20 years in a sort of the human resources background. I spent the first 10 years in the disability sector. And then I went out to sort of the corporate commercial technology business. And I spent a good amount of time in that space. And then more recently, over the last couple of years, back in the community services sector, working in youth work and as the general manager of Kaiser Community. So I have experience in lots of my jobs around recruitment and getting the best out of our people and making sure that our processes are efficient and valuable. And so excited to be part of this panel today.
Oh, well, thank you so much for joining us, James. And our last panelist, we've got Gemma with a J. Please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Jenny. Yes, Gemma with a J from 𝗿𝗶𝗴𝗵𝘆. So similar to James and Gemma, I have spent the last 20 years, I guess, working in a number of different HR roles across a few different industries. Recruitment has always been part of that. And I guess more recently, in the last 6 years, I've headed up the recruitment arm of 𝗿𝗶𝗴𝗵𝘆. So working with a lot of small to medium-sized businesses, obviously working in a more proactive way in terms of recruitment, building high-performing teams. And yeah, I think just really focusing on giving founders and leaders time back on, what they can do best. Yeah, that's what we do. So.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So before we get stuck into today's session, we're going to quickly open up an introductory poll. So we'd really love for all of our audience to let us know, what is your biggest challenge when it comes to hiring right now? So a couple of options. It might be attracting the right candidates on a limited budget. Perhaps it's hiring quickly enough to keep up with business demands, or perhaps you're managing a busy schedule and juggling all those hiring responsibilities. Maybe it's all of the above. We'd love to hear from you. So while your answers are being tallied, I'd love to just quickly take you through some housekeeping for today's webinar. So we will obviously be recording today's session. So please, there'll be a copy of the recording and the slides going out to you at the end of today's session. We're also going to keep the Q&A question box open at the bottom of your Zoom screens. We'll hopefully get to some of those questions live in today's sessions and answer them for you. So please do pop them in the box, and yeah, we'll address some of those at the end of the session. Excellent. I think we might take a quick look and see. Oh, okay. So 43% of you did say that all of the above. So lots of topics that we will hopefully be able to cover in today's session. But attracting the right candidates on a limited budget. Absolutely hear you loud and clear on that. I think we'll be able to address some of those today. So thank you so much, everyone. All right, I think without further ado, it is time to start today's engaging conversation. And I think we're going to start with the sourcing talent. So Gemma with a J, I'd like to ask you the first question. There are various ways and channels to source and engage talent from. So where are you finding great talent right now for some of your clients?
Great question, Jenny. I think that is the number one question everyone wants answered these days, because the market is tough, but I think it's really dependent on the type of role, industry and location that you're recruiting in. So really understanding where your ideal candidates are hanging out is important to be able to find great talent. So I guess some examples of that, if you're looking for your picker packers for your warehouse or retail staff, you could be posting job ads in your local community Facebook groups. For trades or technical roles, tapping into TAFE job boards or industry schools. If you're a tech startup, you might look to get your job listed on the email newsletter for the local incubator hub, as an example. Not-for-profits, there's a whole heap of not-for-profit job boards out there that specialise in that industry and sector. And then for professional roles, you might attend networking events, post your jobs in Slack or WhatsApp industry association chat groups. But then there's also, the referrals from within your own network or other team members that you've got as well. So I guess that's sort of a few options to look into when working out how to spread the word on, that you are recruiting and you're open for business. But I think probably what's more important when it comes to sourcing and finding great candidates is the work you do before you actually have a vacancy that you need to fill. So for me, that's sort of two key things that I recommend doing. And that looks like planning out your potential vacancies in advance and also clearly defining your employee value proposition. So for me, that looks like including recruitment in your business planning cycle, just like you would do with your budgeting and your marketing activities, because people are obviously your biggest asset. And I feel like you get better results when you plan and you're intentional with your recruitment efforts. So knowing what roles you need when will really help you to plan out your go-to-market approach and give you time to recruit and avoid that panic hiring and just trying to get a bum in the seat. Yeah. And then I think, understanding EVP. So if you aren't sure what that is, the best place to start is looking at your current team and asking them what they love about working with your business and why. That'll give you a great starting point. And from there, I guess, you can give potential candidates insight into your EVP by sharing stories about your culture and values through social media, your newsletters, at networking industry events as well. So I guess that's, two really key points to start with. And then from there, just use a blended approach to sourcing. So using lots of different channels works best. Don't rely on just one. So like I said before, referrals from your current employees, putting together an employee referral program. Understand though what motivates your employees to refer candidates in. It's not always monetary that they're looking for. And lean on your own network, social media, using your job boards, whether that be niche job boards or just your standard ones that are out there. And just make it easy in general for people to express their interest in working with you through your website. So I think, just being intentional overall with your recruitment will get you much better results than just a scattergun approach.
Wow, great insights there. Thank you so much, Gemma. And yeah, hear you loud and clear with the referrals. It's still definitely a pretty big channel that, we are able to engage the, existing employee networks. Have you seen an unexpected sourcing channel pay off for you recently or in the past? Anything that you saw that was like, oh, that was actually unexpected?
Yeah, I guess, you know, we sort of all talk about building a candidate pool or a talent pool, and you know, you don't always know if people are going to still be interested in your business when you go back to them. But recently we were working with an e-commerce brand. They scaled much quicker than they anticipated to. And we were recruiting for their customer service team. And through that process, we sort of built a talent pool of potential future candidates from that ad campaign, but as well as others. And really, you know, put people in there that showed alignment to their values and culture. And when they were scaling, they went, oh, we really need another customer service person. So we just went straight back to that talent pool and were able to engage someone within a week. So I think that was a really positive outcome for them.
Absolutely. We love a good talent pool, just keeping those people engaged that may not have been the right timing before, but able to reach out to them later. Fantastic. Anything to add, Gemma or James?
Yeah, look, I just a couple of things. Happy to add. Gemma had some great ideas, and maybe just to strengthen, I should say Gemma with a J, just to strengthen what she spoke about. So in our organization and other organizations that I've worked for, you know, we treat employee referrals with, you know, they're important because obviously, you know, if staff are referring their friends or others to the organization, I think that can only be a good thing. And I think, you know, culture is really key in a business. It's really important that you have a culture where staff want to refer their friends, and I think that sort of generates a great pipeline. So we've had some successes with that. One of the other things that we've done, and Gemma mentioned this as well, is that we have partnered with training organizations. So in my line of work, it's important that individuals who work in youth work have a qualification or are studying towards a qualification, whether that be a Cert 4 in youth work or a diploma level in this sort of industry. And so we have a relationship with a training organization. And the great thing about that is that, you know, they're constantly referring individuals that are training with them to our organization. And so those that are studying with this training organization have, you know, that these individuals, it's their passion, it's what they want to do. They've decided that they want to work in youth work. And so we're ahead of the game in that sense. And so it's been really good to have a funnel of individuals ready to come work for us. So I would say definitely looking at training organizations or other businesses that can funnel prospective staff to you. The only other one that I would add is, you know, we often talk about trying to find the passive people, and how do we do that? One of the things that we've tried to do more recently is review our website. And if you go onto our website, we've got a great Working With Us video, and Gemma spoke about an EVP and, you know, being able to define that. And, you know, working for Kaiser Community, you know, it's about the passion, it's about wanting to make a difference. And I think we've captured that in our EVP video. And, you know, often we will have people say, oh, look, I watched your video and it just made me want to apply. And so I think that could be another option for people to really look at their EVP and look at, you know, what they're doing to sell, what you're doing to sell your organization to protect prospective employees.
Yeah, really powerful stuff. An EVP can, you know, turn around, you know, the engagement levels of, you know, candidates that you're trying to, you know, attract and entice to, you know, consider positions. And Gemma, what about you?
Yeah, so I think also, like, just the other thing I would think of is not forgetting about or being really intentional about your current workforce and them, like how they can apply for you know, vacancies or opportunities that come up as well. And often you can tie that kind of together with the likes of your you know, referrals or your referral opportunities as well. But yes, I've definitely been in the seat where sometimes that has been overlooked and it's generally not received well. So yeah, learn from the mistakes. And I guess another thing, probably more so on the tail end of that, I would really encourage actually tracking where your applicants are coming from and tracking, you know, where your hires are coming from, and, you know, keeping that information over time, analyzing it so that you can be really intentional about, you know, what kind of platforms to use or which paths to take. Yeah.
Really helpful advice. Actually, it's good to do that retrospective afterwards and see, like, actually, we got lots of candidates from this channel and this source. So fantastic advice there. Wonderful. I think we'll keep moving along. And James, for our next question, I'd like to understand beyond sourcing, what helps you define the right candidate at Kaiser Community? I understand you've got a few diverse roles. So what do you look for early on to know if someone's a good fit or a good add to your business?
Yeah, great question. Look, I would say we have a vision, a mission, and we have values. And for us, they're not just words. There's actually meaning behind our vision, mission, and values. And so when it comes to hiring staff, we make sure that they align with our vision, mission, and values. And if they don't, then they're not right for our organization. And so it's really important that you know, when we're going through our interview process, when we're identifying potential candidates, when we're going through our recruitment process, whatever that looks like, we have our vision, mission, and values in mind. And then we interview and assess to that standard. So our vision, mission, and values really is that standard. You know, our values are about integrity. I mean, who doesn't want somebody with integrity just coming into their business? I mean, it's the number one value for us. Cultural inclusion. You mentioned before that, you know, we obviously do have a diverse workforce, and you know, we hire people from lots of different cultural backgrounds, and that's actually a strength for us. And it enables us to provide better quality care to children and young people. And so we embrace that, but definitely hire to our vision, mission, and values.
Yeah, we have a very similar framework in place here at Employment Hero. That mission definitely needs to, you know, lead the hiring processes, and those values really underpin, you know, your behaviours. How do you coach some of the hiring managers maybe to look beyond the CV and kind of identify some of those skills that you've just talked about?
Yep. So I think there's a couple of things we do. So, you know, obviously I feel very passionate about vision, mission, and values. And when you look at our vision, mission, and values, it's not just something that we talk about on their first day of employment. I mean, our values are an Employment Hero. When someone comes in, we talk about them in induction. We talk about them in our training. We've got a training room, and we have our vision, mission, and values plastered on the back of the wall. It's everywhere. Wherever you go across our business, you see that. And so I think actually organically, it becomes just the standard. And in some respect, I don't have to train the managers because it's all around them. But it definitely, sometimes I think it can sometimes be in the recruitment process, you lose a bit of the human element. And so when you're getting resumes, I mean, answer to your question about how do you actually coach them to look beyond the resume, there is nothing like having a conversation with somebody. Now, most people would say, oh, James, I don't have time to have conversations with the 180 applications that I get for an administration role when I've applied for that. And I get that. And I'm not saying that you have to speak to 180 people, and there's you know, things that we can do to reduce the amount of time. But I will always say that as you're going, and I'll say this to my managers and anybody that's in the recruitment space, that as you're going through a resume, number one, look to your vision, mission, and values. Do they align with that? And then if there's some questions that you have about those candidates, where you think that there's some potential and you want to draw out a few things and you want to, you know, assess whether or not they're, you know, they're going to be right for your organization. There's nothing like the human element of actually having just a brief conversation with that individual. They appreciate it, and it certainly helps me and my recruitment team to be able to make better hiring decisions in the space, because that's ultimately what it's about. We want to make sure that we hire the right person at the right time, in the right amount of time, but that's right for your business.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to continue exploring this topic around, saving ourselves time. And we do get lots of applications through this conversation today. But I think we're going to move it along. And 𝗔𝗲 with a G, spotting the right candidates early on is pretty key. So really keen to hear from you on a related topic. And some of the challenges that we tend to face is candidate drop-offs. So what part of the hiring process really makes or breaks keeping candidates engaged?
Yeah, so I think in my mind, I've got like one word and it's communication. I think it's just so critical to keeping candidates engaged. So I think, naturally that ranges from acknowledging with candidates that you've actually received their application, giving them a little bit of information back around, what the process might look like, what the timelines are, when they can expect to hear back from you regarding next steps. And then I guess also too, there is the timeliness aspect. I've definitely, again, learned from my mistakes, have been working with hiring managers in the past, and actually we're just going too slow, and you do end up losing some good candidates from it. So I think it's being able to identify that, ideally early. If that is happening, using it as a coaching conversation with managers as well to kind of keep them moving. And again, just coming back to that communication piece, it's just so critical. And I think, I've seen it time and time again as well, not just obviously at the start of the process with candidate drop off, but also at the end of the process, where the amount of times candidates have come back to me and said, thanks so much for letting me know that I didn't get the job, even if it, didn't make it to the interview process. Not many people do that, and it always baffles me. But I just think it's so critical. They're people, and we need to treat everyone like people, essentially.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Got it. Just a thank you note, or, closing the loop goes a long way to really make sure that you are providing a really good candidate experience. Have you found kind of getting any feedback from candidates has kind of changed or improved your hiring process at any stage?
I think, again, it's probably more like when those candidate drop-offs happen, when I should say if, and using that to feed back to the hiring managers, particularly at times if you're dealing with new managers, or managers that are in like a highly demanding operational role. Sometimes that recruitment piece, as much as they want the person, it it gets bumped down the list. So sometimes you have to nag. And again, I think also just that, probably less about changing the process, but using that candidate feedback to reaffirm what parts of the process are actually going well and that you need to keep doing as well is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Positive and constructive feedback. Always welcome. James or 𝗔𝗲, anything to add to this one?
The only thing that I'd add, and I think communication is essential, I'd also say speed of hire is really important, because if your recruitment process is elongated and it just takes too long to get through it, you'll lose potential candidates to other businesses that have a faster hiring process. And that's not to say that you want to lose quality processes in hiring. You definitely want to still hire the right person, but I think there are things that we can do to strengthen the recruitment process, improve the speed at which we hire, and a lot of those things are things like applicant tracking systems, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but, you know, things that Employment Hero has and other organizations and other systems and platforms that enable a quality hiring process, but efficient, allowed to be efficient.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what both James and Gemma have said. Communication is key. And it's just those short little things, you know, you can make your life easier, have those templates ready to go, you can quickly customize them. But just let candidates know where the process is at. You know, are you still interviewing? Has there been a delay because someone's unwell? You know, be as transparent as you can in the process. But then also, I think asking them to keep you updated on where their other applications are at in their processes as well, because often they'll have a few, you know, irons in the fire. So if they are a good quality candidate, you want to know whether or not they're going to move quickly, and then you can keep up with that as well. But I think then once again, front-end loading your process is important. So planning out your timelines around advertising, making sure everyone's on the same page when it comes to, you know, your interviews, when you're scheduling those for, making sure everyone's available, because that could be the worst thing ever. You know, you've scheduled interviews and then all of a sudden your hiring manager's away on leave and you don't know. So making sure that you're really clear around what those timelines look like in your recruitment process, I think will help you to keep on track. And once again, time to hire, like James said, we'll bring it back in.
Agree. Just investing that time up front is going to save you time later. There's nothing worse than having a process that's just not readily developed, and yeah, you're wasting time by trying to build it as you go. So yeah, just having something up front is pretty critical. Nice, really great tips here, guys. So I think we're going to stay with you, Gemma, with a G. And my next question, and it's something we've already started to highlight, is around passive candidates. So when do you advise investing time in kind of outreaching to passive candidates, and how do you engage with them effectively?
Yeah, so I think this one works. I think it's worth investing in this, particularly when you've got, you know, whether it's sort of some specific specialized kind of roles, roles that are proving like hard to recruit, or they might be on the skills shortage list, or whatever it may be. But, you know, I guess some of those kind of niche type roles. And I guess like in terms of reaching out to those potential candidates and engaging them effectively, I've always found, you know, trying to, where possible, actually, you know, well, in New Zealand at least, it's like 2 degrees of separation, right? So finding someone that actually has that connection rather than going in kind of cold can make such a difference. So and again, that's where often you know, utilizing your current workforce, your current networks, etc., to sort of try and reach those passive candidates, I think works really well.
Yeah, I love that. I was going to say, what are your top tips maybe for, you know, engaging with a Kiwi, if you're kind of outreaching to them, finding that kind of common interest probably sounds like a good tip there.
Yeah.
Nice. And anything to add to this one, Gemma or James?
I think one really key thing you can do is if you've got good candidates coming in, they're showing interest in your brand and your business, add them to your mailing list or your newsletter. You know, put your job openings on there, show you insights, you know, behind the scenes, what's happening, what wins have we got. It'll just keep your brand top of mind. And it may be that, you know, they don't know, or they can't fill the role that you're looking for, but they may have someone in their network that they can refer on. So I think just having that connection and building that awareness around your brand through that mailing list is a really good way and easy way of staying in touch with passive candidates.
And just on what Gemma said too, you know, like we in previous organizations, I've had like an alumni where much like the newsletter, often people will leave your business and then realize that the grass isn't always greener on the other side, and then they'll come back to you and they'll be like, God, you know, James, can I have my job back? But I think maybe creating alumni of staff, and particularly those ones that, you know, you really would have back and you would love them to be back in your business, and you just never know what will happen down the track, and whether it's a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. I think if you keep that engagement with those alumni, then it's another way to find those passive candidates.
I absolutely love that idea. And we have a couple of boomerang candidates sometimes return to Employment Hero as well. So definitely, yeah, engage with ex-employees. It's a great source of talent there as well. Nice one. Really great tips here. Thanks, everyone. I think we'll move to our next question. So, James, you are one of our customers, and what we also hear from our Employment Hero customers is some pain points, and that's how to find talent quickly, how to reduce time screening candidates, and perhaps ways that you are leveraging technology, something like an applicant tracking system, to help streamline your hiring processes. Talk us through, what you've adopted.
Yeah, look, I mean, I love applicant tracking systems, and I've worked in organisations where we've started with, and quite a few organisations where you're just using Seek. You've got a Seek account, and you're having those job applications come through to an email address, and you're processing them through an email address. So I get it. I know what that's like. I've experienced it myself. But when you go from that to having an applicant tracking system and being able to capture everything, like your life has changed. And, we've certainly done that in the organisations that I've worked for. We do that here at Kaiser Community, and it's something that I implemented when I started here. We went from that generic Seek process to utilising Employment Hero and the applicant tracking system. So being able to communicate with candidates, have that in one place where you don't have to go to, look up different emails that you've sent to the individual. That's really helpful. Automating the reference checking process has been something that's been for us as well. And I know I said before, you want the human element, and I absolutely believe that wholeheartedly, but the human element can't necessarily be for every single element of the recruitment process. So you do need to be able to find efficiencies that still keep the quality of candidates coming through, but enable you to focus your attention and time on the most important things, and that is finding the right person to join your organization. So definitely automating the reference process has been helpful to us. Pre-screening questions has also been really helpful. So, when we go through the application process, generally we'll ask a few questions. Not many, because again, the speed in which you hire. Often people we've heard the saying, it's the path to least resistance. And so if you have a process that's too long, that's too complicated, that requires the candidate to do too much, they just won't do it. And so I think, but with the pre-screening questions, they're simple. Generally, we'll ask a few things, and then if a candidate doesn't respond to them or doesn't answer them, well, then that's an easy way to determine whether or not you're going to further the process with that individual or not. Particularly when you advertise roles where there is a high application process, or depending on the role. But then there's other roles where naturally, they're a bit harder to find, and so you don't get as many applications. But again, that's where the human element comes in. You might speak to a few more of those individuals than you would in a high application role. So yeah, I definitely think those are some things that we've done, and applicant tracking system is definitely the way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to see those kind of, human interactions to interview candidates and get to know them and automate the manual processes behind the scenes. So, Gemmas, anything you want to maybe chime in on here that you've been able to kind of automate through your hiring processes? Any kind of cost-effective tools or technologies that you might be leveraging as well?
I think probably just reiterating what James said then around the screening questions. I think that is such a useful aspect, and again, particularly if you're dealing with situations where you've got a large number of applications. And again, as he said, keeping it reasonably brief, you know, probably 3 to 5 kind of questions. And yeah, you might have a couple of even yes, no questions in there, depending on the answer that may automatically disqualify some candidates. But I think also, you know, it gives you that opportunity to include some like values and behavioural type questions as well, which again, to what James was sort of saying earlier, you know, helps you kind of look at that cultural fit aspect as part of the screening kind of process as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what both James and Gemma have said, that those screening questions are such a huge help. And I kind of look at it as my top 3 to 5 non-negotiables for a role. So whether that's in skills, experience, culture, and also sort of working environment as well. So, you know, do they want hybrid or are they wanting in office? So I really do look at that. Sorry, excuse me. And then for your small sort of businesses, I think starting with simple things like, you know, your templated communications, and also calendar integrations for interview scheduling. It just makes it so much easier. You're not on the phone trying to schedule interviews around everyone else. You know, when people are available, they can book in when it suits for them, and it just takes one less thing off your to-do list, especially when you're trying to juggle everything. I know a lot of people, you know, they're wearing the HR hat. They're not necessarily, you know, HR isn't your full-time job. You've got so many other things to do. So just trying to, yeah, remove those barriers once again internally is a big help.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Top tip there is get a scheduling tool that can automate that for you, because there's nothing worse than the back and forth trying to find a time. So yeah, really great tip there. Thank you so much. Well, actually staying with you, Gemma, with a J. From your experience, what elements make the hiring experience a standout, you know, and really positive experience for candidates? For even those that don't get the role, I know we kind of mentioned this earlier. So yeah, how do you just ensure that candidates feel valued throughout the process, even the ones that maybe aren't so successful?
Yeah, I think, you know, back to what Gemma said earlier, clear and consistent communication 100% is always going to be the most important thing that you can incorporate in your process. You know, keeping candidates in the loop, like I said before, set up templates that you can personalize. I personally commit to updating candidates weekly, and whether or not that's, hey, I don't have any news for you yet, or you know, if they're sort of through the interview process, then I'll always flick them a text, give them a, you know, a phone call. You know, text messaging has become so much more accepted in the recruitment process these days. I have a lot of candidates that prefer to text rather than get on the phone, which I find quite strange. But yeah, it's definitely, you know, you just got to go with the flow and what works best for them. But I think also in those comms, just letting them know this is the stage we're at in the process. This is what you can expect in terms of next steps, and when you'll expect your next update. So I think that just shows respect for their time, obviously, and then also the effort they're putting in to make an application with you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm also finding that text is a really main communication channel now, rather than the kind of formal email, or people are a bit strapped for time to kind of talk on the phone. So yeah, great shout on text. Anything from you, James or Gemma, on this one also?
I think Gemma's covered it.
Yeah.
No problem. Well, I think to kind of just wrap up this conversation before we start to jump into some of our Q&A questions, I'd like to hear from all of you. If there's one thing our audience can take away from today and to do right now, it might be to improve how they hire, or yeah, source different you know, channels for talent. What would it be? What would be your advice? Let's start with you, James.
That's one, but I'm going to give you three short words.
We'll take three.
And I think communication is critical. Ease of application process. So it's okay to review it, like review it and review it regularly. Like, don't feel like one size fits all. You can actually change how you do things to fit the role or fit the type of person that you're trying to search for. And then the human element. I think there still needs to be an element of human interaction in your process where possible. Top three.
Nice. Awesome. And what about you, Gemma, with a G?
Yeah, so for me, and again, it comes down to that communication piece and the human element. But I guess a kind of key thing that I would often kind of discuss with the hiring managers to sometimes help them change their mindset a little bit was to kind of say to them, okay, like you need to treat every candidate like a potential customer. Think of that person as your next potential customer walking in the door and buying a product from us. Like you need to kind of, you know, I can't think of the words now, but you know, like nurture that relationship in that way, I guess. Even if, you know, you're in the middle of an interview, or not even the middle, you know, sometimes a hiring manager can make their mind up in the first 30 seconds, first 5 minutes, whatever it may be. And I don't know about anybody else, but I've, you know, been in situations where it's actually really noticeable. And so I guess using that again as an opportunity to coach the hiring managers and help change their mindset in that space. And I think that works particularly well for managers who are in like a service or retail kind of based area. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is important to really partner and coach hiring managers there. I mean, they are going to be at the end of the day responsible for this hire. So yeah, absolutely, really great tips there. And lastly, with you, Gemma.
Thanks, Jenny. I think probably two key takeaways for me is treat your recruitment as a strategic and planned process, not a reactive one. So put it on your business calendar alongside the finance and the marketing activities. You know, map out your hiring needs 6 to 12 months in advance. And then, you know, they'll align with your business goals as well. And then I think to build on what both James and Gemma were saying, communication is definitely key, but I think what candidates really remember the most is how you make them feel. So that human element is a huge piece. So whether or not they get the job, people want to feel like they weren't just another number in the process. So even when people don't get the role, give them feedback. You know, the way you treat them will shape their perception of your brand. And then that means, you know, they're going to be more likely to apply again. They might refer others, or they'll become a customer down the line. So just really keep that in mind. There is a person behind the application, and treat them with that respect.
Yeah, absolutely. Even coming back to, you know, the talent pools, right? It's might not be right now. It could be later. So yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much for all of your advice and tips here. So throughout the session, we have had some questions come through from our audience. So yeah, let's get stuck into some things that you're all curious about. One question is in regards to referrals. So we talked about that earlier. What sort of rewards or incentives would our panel suggest to, I guess, incentivize referrals, and maybe some terms and conditions that you've put in place as well? Anyone like to jump in on this first one?
I'll just say one thing. Look, I've been in businesses where we have implemented formal referral programs and not, and you know the formal referral programs have been good. You know, where we've offered a successful candidate who you interview and is hired. Generally, we will pay X amount on, or give them an incentive to say they're successful, they're hired. On start date, you'll get 50%, and then after 6 months probationary period, you'll get the other 50%. And that's been good. In our current organization, we don't have a paid referral process, but that's because I believe that like our culture is just good. And so naturally, people want to refer friends, family, neighbors. And so I think if you can focus on your culture and improve it and make sure that it's strong, I think the referrals will naturally come.
Yeah, I guess I've not actually had a formal referral kind of program in place in previous roles either. But I think if you did want to have something formal, but equally like where cost might be an issue, I guess some kind of out of the box ways to think about rewards could be, giving the employee an extra paid day's leave, like as a one-off or something along those lines, where you're not actually having to, you know, physically hand over a bonus or whatever it may be. Yeah, that's just my 2 cents worth there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, James, what you said around culture, you know, I think like attracts like. So definitely, you know, you bring in those obviously referrals that would be aligned to your culture and your values. And, you know, sometimes it's just about showing appreciation to your team for actually bringing those referrals in. So I've seen in some organisations where you give a donation to their preferred charity just to say thank you for referring someone in for a role. So that's another way that you could potentially look at it as well.
Yeah, really great insights here, because I think, yeah, when it comes to incentive, it might not necessarily always be that cash incentive. There are absolutely other ways to incentivize your employees, and yeah, donation to a charity, extra day off. There's definitely some cost-effective ways to do that as well. So really great. Thank you so much. Another topic we've definitely covered today is that speed of hire. It definitely seems to be on the front of everyone's mind. So where there isn't maybe a formal HR manager or recruiter, and it obviously comes down to juggling your day, what would generally be like an acceptable timeline from that first contact to the job offer? Does anyone have any, I guess, examples or kind of timelines that they tend to work with in this instance?
We don't have a set, you know, I don't have a set target. We just want to make sure that we find the right person, and if that's in a decent amount of time, then we'll go for it. I was actually looking at some of my stats the other day as part of my reporting processes, but to give you a bit of an idea, most recently it was 20 days for us from start. So that from applying,
Right.
being able to give a contract, which is really good. And to be honest with you, that's probably not the standard. So well, when I say it's probably the standard in the sense that that's a great time to hire number, but typically organizations out there would probably be taking longer. Generally 4 to 6 weeks, I think, is like 4 weeks that I think would be an appropriate time. As soon as you start getting outside of these 6 weeks, 8 weeks, it's too long. And people will drop off and you'll lose them to other businesses.
Yeah, I'd agree with James. And I sort of look at it in terms of what I'm seeing in the market at the moment is a lot of sort of your better candidates are coming through when you're advertising for the role anyway. They're sort of coming through week 3 and 4 in that advertising campaign. So I guess I kind of look at when am I going to actually start interviewing people, and because I want that candidate experience to be a good one, and so I don't want to leave too much time in between interviews. So if I'm looking at, okay, I've got some good candidates that I want to start progressing, then I would start interviewing them, and sort of, yeah, typically then sort of 3 weeks after that, they'd be looking at offer stage. So I think just, yeah, really assessing your candidate pool and understanding how good it is and the quality of the candidates before you start interviewing, so that you can actually make sure that process flows smoothly from there on in.
I agree with everything I've said. There's probably nothing more to add there.
Yeah, we no set timeline by the sounds of it. You know, obviously quality of hire needs to play into that too. It's not just, yeah, as we say, like bums on seats, but just running a timely process from the moment you make that contact with a candidate to that job offer. If there are going to be delays, come back to, you know, that communication piece and ensuring that, yeah, your candidates are updated. So yeah, nice one. Another topic, and I think this was raised by you, James, was around, you know, ensuring that your company's values, mission and vision is, you know, front of mind. What would you want to see on someone's CV that really kind of demonstrates some of these factors? Is there anything that you've seen that really stands out to you from, you know, reviewing lots of applications? Obviously, this is a question open to you all, but I think it was just something that was raised by James predominantly.
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's always hard to be able to pick it on a CV. And this is where the human element comes in when you bring someone into an interview. Now, what I would say is when I look at a CV, I'm looking at, you know, where they've worked in the past, how long have they worked there for? You know, if they have the last 6 roles, they've only been there 4 months in every role, that's probably a red flag for me to say, well, why has it been such a short amount of time? It doesn't mean that there's not a reason for it, and we can explore that, but typically those are the sorts of things that we'd look out for. I'd also look at if they're, you know, if they've had experience in our field, that would tell me that that's probably a passion for them and that's what they want to do moving forward, and that's the space that they want to work in. But then it's on the flip side, it's when you do get them to come in for an interview, I think it's really important that you have scenario-based questions. And then where possible, you want the candidate to be able to give you real life examples of what they've experienced in previous roles. If they just say, oh, if I would do this in that scenario, I mean, that might be okay for somebody that doesn't have experience in the field in which you're hiring. And some of us have those jobs where you can have an inexperienced person and you train them up and they become experienced. But typically, I would be asking scenario-based questions and wanting a real life example to help me feel confident that they are actually meeting the value, and I can see how they've lived that value in their work and professional and personal life. If they have some personal examples they like to share in an interview.
That's a really great technique. Absolutely. If that's another takeaway for the audience today, is have a blended mix of types of interview questions that you ask. They might be competency based or scenario based. And we probably find that's really effective with maybe someone that's looking to change career or industry, or maybe like a junior entry level candidate that might not have that experience yet. Okay, put yourself in this scenario. What would you then do if you were faced with this challenge, etc.? Anything to add from either of the Gemmers?
No, 100% agree with what James has said. Yeah, it's so important to bring in those scenario-based questions. You can get so much from them. It's really important.
Yeah, I agree. And I think often too, with those scenario-based or behavioral-based questions, is almost taking it a step further and kind of understanding what they learnt from that as well, can give you some really good insights.
Yes, absolutely. I think you've even said it yourself, Gemma, you know, mistakes or failures, they're always a learning. So yeah, definitely.
Or what would you have done differently, or, you know, yeah. Yep.
Absolutely. Love that. A couple of questions have come through, a lot of curiosity around the reference checking processes. Love to hear maybe from I think James in this instance, but again, open to our panelists, is ways in which you're automating this, but also maybe sometimes it's not about the questions and answers, but it's more about what the reference checks say about the person. So yeah, how do you kind of automate that process, but maybe still get like genuine outcomes and insights?
Yeah, I've read this question. I'm looking at some of them that are coming through as well. So Employment Hero does have like an element of automating references where you can request by the push of a button that someone will asking someone to provide their referee details, and then you can call them and go through that process. I've automated our process a little bit further than that. And so we use a platform called 𝗿𝗲𝗰𝗵. I've used other platforms as well. XREF is another one, but 𝗿𝗲𝗰𝗵, I would go as far to say that from a financial perspective is cheaper than XREF, but does exactly the same thing. And we use that to automate the reference checking process. And there was another good question that came from somebody just saying, well, you know, how do you sort of lose out on the human element to that? And that doesn't mean that we don't ever speak to referees. So the automation of the reference checking process is the initial step. And then when we look and read that reference that has come through the platform that we use, which in our case is 𝗿𝗲𝗰𝗵, I'll look at that and say, oh, actually, I think there's some more that I want to explore with this individual and pull out. And then their number will be down the bottom. I'll call them and have a further conversation and make some additional comments. But that's probably the minority rather than the majority. Generally, we'll get back the references, we'll be happy with what they say or not, and then explore it further if we need to with the referee's reference. Yeah.
Love that. Really great takeaways. Anything to add?
No, I think just what James said, follow up, like if there's any of those like little niggly things, I think it's a great opportunity to, really dig down into those, because I think, you always have a little bit of a gut element in the recruitment process. And if you feel like something's off or you want to explore it further, then reference checks are the great opportunity to do that. So don't ignore that in your process either.
And I also just make one other comment, which I found valuable with the electronic reference process. It is actually easy to forge a reference, like where you would put somebody's name down and they just happen to be, you say that they're your manager and they happen to be your mother-in-law or whatever it might be. When you go through electronic reference processes, it actually helps to remove some of the fraudulent reference checking processes. And without going into too much detail, but how these systems work is it basically identifies whether the person doing the reference is on the same IP address as the candidate who has submitted the reference. So I've had some that have come through where it's flagged as a potential fraudulent referee, where the individual has actually just had their partner identified their partner, and then the partner's jumped on the same computer and then written the reference. And then for me, that's an integrity issue. So we talk about values, and I hire to the values. If I'm finding out there's a fraudulent reference, well, that's an easy nope. We're not going to progress further with your application. So there are benefits to having processes like that. Some people might say, well, the human element is lost, but sometimes we need these elements to improve the quality of candidates coming through.
Wow, really interesting. Nice. I think we've got time for one more question. So they would love to hear from our panel members. What methods are you using to score candidates during interviews? And that's just to ensure that there is a really kind of objective process, considering that even structured scoring systems can be influenced by personal judgment. So yeah, anyone got anything to share here about kind of how they're assessing candidates through interviews?
I can jump in here first if you like. So I guess I tend to, work with the manager around whether it's, 4, 5, 6 kind of key aspects that you're going to measure against. And from my perspective, keeping it as simple as possible actually works best. So, 1 to 3 or 1 to 5 kind of scoring method. Do your individual scoring, but then kind of come back at the end of it and collaborate and talk about it. And I've also found that once you sort of do that, well, hypothetically, say you've got 3 or 4 interviews to do, often your scoring isn't actually the same as you work through that process as well. So it's almost kind of coming back to it at the end and moderating it and going, oh yeah, I, scored this for this person and that for that person. But actually in hindsight, now that I kind of compared the two together, I think you naturally as a human, your goalposts kind of move as you get more information, right? So I think it's coming back and kind of moderating it at the end and just, talking about it.
Yeah, I would agree, definitely. Coming back to, doing a regroup at the end of it all, really understanding once again, what are your top 3 to 5 non-negotiables on the role, and making sure you're hitting those with each of the candidates that you're progressing. But yeah, I think having the conversation overall and really sort of working through any niggly bits that anyone might have as part of someone's application, and really understanding that they're the right fit for your business as well.
Look, nothing else to add other than I'm reading these questions and getting sidetracked and thinking, oh, that's a good question. That's good. Yeah, I can answer that. But we just don't have time to be able to answer every single question, but and very specific, some questions even specific to the industry that I'm in as well. So
Nice one. Oh, this has been a really, really great chat and conversation. So thank you so much to, our wonderful panel members, James, Gemma with a J and Gemma with a G. Thank you so very much for joining us. And thank you to our audience as well. Just letting you know that there will be a survey that is automatically going to launch at the end of this webinar. Would really appreciate you providing some feedback. It'll only take a minute to fill in. And like I said at the start, we will send out some additional resources once we've concluded. So again, thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful day and we'll see you next time.
Thanks.